Now, Sean Payton has gotten a job. I guess that was B. And A, what about draft compensation? 2023, that's this year, first-round pick from the Denver Broncos, and a 2024 second-round pick from the Broncos. Sean Payton, he is off the hook with the Saints. He is going to be the next head coach of the Denver Broncos. That was a long, long process, and it seemed to take some twists and some turns along the way, but ultimately it appears as if they got the guy who was their first choice. You know, athletics directors love to stand up. University presidents love to stand up at a press conference and say, we got our first choice. And usually we know that it actually wasn't their first choice that they got. In this case, the Denver Broncos got their first choice, but it took some wiggling and wrangling and maneuvering and talking to other people and coming back to the table and negotiating, and they finally ended with Sean Payton.
You got a good old classic source-off going on. Schefter reporting that he was their first choice. Ian Rappaport reporting that he was their third. That Harbaugh turned them down to stay at Michigan. Okay, Ian, sure he did. Doesn't matter, though, because the Saints have a first-round pick. And here's what's fascinating about this pick. It's where it is. And they needed it because they need good players cheap. The cap expanded. Nick Underhill, as he always does, wrote a good article about how they can get under the cap with $30 million of spending money with these 6 moves or whatever. They're going to be able to get under, but you still need good players cheap, especially when I think you're going to move on from Marcus Davenport, for example. He has been a perpetual underachiever. Frankly, he's sucked since they drafted him. He's been bad. And so, you need pass rush. You need certain guys. You're probably going to go after Jimmy G or Derek Carr. So you need money, right? You need good players cheap. So you have that first-round pick to get a good player cheap, but it is number 29. So what do you do with number 29?
30.
Oh, it's 30. I thought it was 29.
Yeah, I looked at that too, but because the Niners have one more win than the Bengals because of that cancellation, so they have the 30th pick.
Okay, so you don't stretch for one of the quarterbacks that will be remaining in that spot, but you pick 10 picks later. Here's what I'm fascinated by. I think you try to go get best available, whether it be pass rush. You need to get better on the offensive line. Who knows what you're going to do with Michael Thomas? Maybe a running back in that spot if you really like one because Ingram is washed. But what about somebody like Hendon Hooker at 40? Because you've got pick number 40 as well.
Piqued my interest.
So that is where I'm so fascinated by this draft now is you can get best available without having to stretch for a quarterback, and Hooker's still going to be there by every mock at number 40.
Yeah. You've done it. You've cracked the code, Michael Borky. Somebody get that guy a job in New Orleans. Yeah. I mean, it was all about getting back into the first round. They've done that. Sean Payton they had to make a deal like this. The Saints had to have this happen for them. They couldn't let him just sit out the rest of his contract and then go get another job. They had to get some sort of compensation. They did that. I wish Denver had their regular first-round pick. They'd be picking in the top 10 if that were the case. But as it is, that's going to Seattle. And I'm not sure about the risk. Did you want to risk waiting for next year? Because how much better are the Broncos really going to be next year? They could still be picking in the top 10. And that was the other option for the Saints, was to wait till next year and pick up an extra pick this year. I think this is the right move, though, because you just don't ever know. And you couldn't, you have your first round pick next year. So you have at least one. You couldn't do a draft without one first round pick. And there'll be somebody down there at that spot that they like and they'll get.
Borky, what did you say about they have a 20? They have a pick at 20, you were saying?
At 29 or 30.
Oh, okay. I got you. Well, but here's the thing. All right, so picking 30th, but in terms of order, won't it be 29th because Miami has to forfeit that pick at 21?
Yeah.
Am I looking at this accurate? So the 2023 draft order.
Oh, okay, yeah.
The Saints pick 30th. But
29th, Borky. I was wrong.
Well, no, but I mean, in terms of the slot, they picked 30th in place of San Francisco. But that's actually the 29th pick because Miami has to forfeit a first-round pick because of the tampering deal with Tom Brady and Stephen Ross and their organization. So it's actually it's slot number 30, but the 29th pick in the first round. And then you think 40, which was their next scheduled pick, is the spot where you might get Hendon Hooker.
If he's still there, it would make sense, right? I mean,
absolutely.
You know, I like Derek Carr more than most people. I even tweeted it, and people were like, "You're crazy." No, look at his numbers and look at his play and look at the defenses that he had to work with. I mean, Brady's not winning 6 Super Bowls with the worst defense in the NFL on an annual basis. Okay, Carr had a lot stacked against him: coaching, turnover, bad rosters, and he still produced. I mean, you can do much worse than Derek Carr, I guess is what I'm saying. Same thing with Jimmy Garoppolo. Is there better? Of course there's better. Is there worse? Yeah, a lot worse than Jimmy Garoppolo. But do you want to scrap that idea if Hooker's available and decide, here's a rookie, lit up the SEC. You still have Dalton, so you don't have to throw him into the fire right away if you don't think he's ready. But he's a tall, big kid, a smart kid, a good locker room guy with all the physical ability in the world. If he's still there, why would you not, I guess would be my question. Why would you not draft somebody like Hooker at 40 if he's there at 40? What's the downside?
Yeah.
I mean, quarterbacks are always risky, but...
All right, so what do we have left in terms of coach openings? Indianapolis. Arizona hasn't hired anybody yet, have they?
Arizona and Indy.
Okay, so those two are still open. Because the Houston Texans also have hired or are in the process of hiring DeMeco Ryans. I couldn't help but laugh at Ralph Russo, who writes the AP. Long time ago, Ralph worked here in Mississippi as well as an AP writer. And he says, so it would be fun if we were doing the somewhat useless but also entertaining exercise of forecasting the next Alabama coach. Where would DeMeco Ryans be on the list of possibilities? And that brings into the conversation that we always have about coaching in the NFL versus coaching in college. And if it doesn't go well in Houston for DeMeco Ryans, then Alabama probably wouldn't want him. And if it doesn't go, or if it goes well with Houston, then DeMeco Ryans probably wouldn't want Alabama. So not terribly likely, but I did think that was a question that made you stop and think just for a second.
Wait, that he would take over for Nick Saban as the sitting head coach of the Houston Texans?
Well, that was the question.
Well,
most people would say it's the best job in college football. Let's say 4 or 5 years down the line, Nick Saban retires. We're all trying to figure out who's going to be next. And I guess my point was, if it doesn't go well in Houston, then DeMeco Ryans is not attractive to Alabama. And if it goes well in Houston, then maybe Alabama is not attractive to DeMeco Ryans as a sitting head coach in the NFL.
Yeah. Now, Alabama's hired an NFL head coach where it wasn't going well in the past, and it worked out for him.
That is a correct statement. He did have college coaching experience. DeMeco Ryans coached in college at all? There are obviously ties to Alabama for DeMeco Ryans. But anyway, that's a conversation for another day when there's nothing.